evening. You're watching the Urban Debate. I'm Kavita Krishnan. Viewers, we all know that it is not a good time to be job hunting. But a report that has just been released by the Centre for Monitoring Indian Economy, or the CMI, shows us just how bad it is, especially for the educated urban Indian. Now, according to the CMI, 44% of India's graduates living in cities are unemployed. And trust me, it gets worse. Fresh graduates, these are those who've just finished their studies, those who've just entered the job market, the ones who are aged 20 to 24 years of age. 63% of such graduates do not have jobs, which means a majority of the graduate force which is entering the market looking for a job is not getting one. Now, between the ages of 25 to 29, CMI found that 23.4% of the graduates do not have jobs. In people over 30, 2.5% graduates are unemployed. Now, you might wonder why there is a disparity as the age increases. You might wonder if there is some good news behind these numbers. But CMI's Mahesh Vyas explains it. He says, and I quote, "A wait for a job cannot be infinite." What he means is that people after a certain age are settling for whatever they get. In fact, I spoke with Mahesh Vyas sometime back on this report, and I began by asking him, why is it becoming so difficult to find jobs in cities which are supposed to be that mecca where people go to find jobs? Listen to what he had to say.
Well, the people who live in the cities are the ones who are looking for better quality jobs. The quality of jobs available in rural India are very poor quality. People working on farm not adding much to productivity classify themselves as employed doing some work on the farms. So that's actually, in a sense, disguised employment. And if you'd like to really measure the unemployment rate and the way the jobs are growing, we should look at the urban sectors. And that's the point we are making in the report that we have come out with, that the overall unemployment rate at 7.5% is somewhat misleading. It shows an unemployment rate of 6.8% in rural India, while in urban India, it is 9%. So this is the first takeaway, that don't just look at the 7.5% number, because it has a very large representation from rural India, which is 66% share. Then there is a point about the educated people who are looking for better quality jobs. So it's a combination of urban and educated where the stress point is, and 7.5%, the headline number, does not reflect this adequately.
Well, we've also grown up hearing that education should ideally improve your career prospects, but the CMI report shows quite the opposite. Mahesh Vyas explained that as well. Listen in.
It is largely because they're looking for better quality jobs and they're not finding better quality jobs. A person who has completed his graduation is unlikely to merely go and work in the farm, shoveling a little soil here and there, or doing small odd jobs on the farm, or even odd jobs at a small shop. So an educated person expects a better quality job, and those better quality jobs are not available. And these educated graduates particularly are finding it extremely difficult to find jobs. The unemployment rate for graduates in the age group of 20 to 24 has increased from around 45% in 2017 to 55% in 2018, and now to 63% in 2019. So this is fairly large an unemployment rate. The situation doesn't improve much if you go up the age scale also. So India faces a big challenge in finding good jobs, good quality jobs for people who have gone through the trouble of getting themselves educated.
We also wanted to know what it means when Mahesh Vyas says better quality jobs.
A better quality job is one that gives you some sense of security in a job. It ends the month with a salary rather than working with uncertainty regarding the amount of payment you will get and the probability of the payment that you will get. A good quality job is different from employment, which is of the kind of being self-employed. Say, for example, a carpenter or a fitter or a plumber or a painter who's standing by the curb looking for a job today. These are daily wage earners whose quality of employment is not exactly the one that is desirable. An employed person will not be willing to be a daily wage earner. Gigs may be fashionable, but that applies to an extremely small population which will be willing to accept such fashionable gigs. A large proportion of the educated youth would look for jobs in the government or in the private sector, large private sector companies that give you a career, that give you a sense of purpose, and not merely somehow eking a living out of poor quality jobs.
Now, the CMI report also shows an interesting trend where job prospects seemingly get better as one grows older. But is that the truth behind the numbers?
Well, it's actually a reflection of giving up. I mean, how long do you continue to look for a good quality job? If you don't get a good quality job, even when you cross the age of 30, you cannot afford to remain unemployed for too long. So you're willing to take up any not so good quality job as well. And mind you, an important factor in this is that the max age by which you can get a government job is around 30. For some classes of people, it is a little over 30, but most people become overage for jobs if they cross 30. So once people cross 30, they even take up not so good quality jobs. You can't afford to remain unemployed forever. It's not that jobs become better after 30. It's just that people cannot afford to remain unemployed after 30.
Now, is the quality of a job also linked to the quantum of income one person would get?
That's right. It is about the income that they get. And it's not only about the income, it's also about the certainty/uncertainty of the income. You may make a lot of money on a particular day, but that doesn't mean that you'll make the same money the next day. Or you may get a contract that may be good for some time, but that does not give you certainty of the same thing continuing in the immediate future. So it's about the income and about the certainty of the income. So both suffer when the quality of jobs go down.
Well, the CMI report clearly paints a very grim picture, and all the data that we have been seeing of late points to growth further slowing down. So what does that mean? Will the job scenario worsen?
If the growth does not pick up, the job scenario will certainly worsen. It's not possible to have growth and not possible to not have growth and still have jobs continuing. For the last nearly 10 years, we have seen the investment rate come down. If the investment rate comes down, then we cannot have growth in jobs at all. So if the growth does not pick up, that's not a very good sign for the educated people in the country.
And finally, government agencies like the EPF and the ESIC have also released jobs data. Now, this data shows an addition of over 14 to 19 lakh jobs. It is a very different segment that is being spoken about here as compared to the CMI data. But I did ask Mahesh Vyas what was his take on that data.
Well, there has been a steady increase in registrations under EPFO and ESIC, and this is a reflection of a formalization of employment. I don't even call it jobs. So increasingly people are enrolling or they have to get themselves enrolled under these schemes, and it merely shows an increase in this enrollment. So there could be a person who was working so far but was not enrolled in EPFO and now has got enrolled in EPFO. So this is merely an enrollment. This is in a sense a formalization, and I'm not even sure it continues to hold the formalization promise. So this is very different. It is certainly not an indicator of employment. It is possibly an indicator of formalization, but even that is starting to become a little doubtful.
Well, that was Mahesh Vyas, MD and CEO of the CMIE, or the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, who's put out this report. Let's quickly go across to our panel now. We are joined by Santosh Mehrotra, who's Professor of Economics at the Center for Informal Sector and Labour Studies at the JNU. He's also an economist. Anila Singh joins us. She is the spokesperson of the BJP. And Professor Aman Agarwal is also with us, who is a director at the Indian Institute of Finance. We will shortly be joined by Aditya Narayan Mishra. He is the CEO and director of CIEL HR. I welcome all of you to the show, and I'd like to begin by talking with Santosh Mehrotra. Santosh Mehrotra, you've definitely seen this report. Tell us this, what does it mean? Does it mean that there are very few entry-level jobs available? Is that what we should understand?
Broadly, that is correct. Broadly, that is correct. And it's not just CMIE data that is telling us this. We know from the National Sample Survey Organization's PLFS, which was released in late May of 2019, that shows exactly the same thing. If you're interested, I can reel off for you the educated unemployment rates by levels of education. But this data is consistent with what the government has released, and it has now been analyzed by myself as well as others, and this is in the public domain. So what CMI is saying is totally consistent with government data.
Right. Professor Aman Agarwal, you're the other economist on the panel, the other expert who's been tracking this sector very closely. What are you finding?
You see, there are a few things which I do not agree with what Mahesh said. First of all, he's only surveyed about 1,74,000 households in a population base of about 1.34 billion people. Secondly, there is no information as to what base of survey has it catered to, what all categories, what all are there in the information which I have seen through so far in the CMIE is not clear. Third, which he is talking about in terms of job satisfaction and all, and in terms of income, my student gets the same salary which I am getting after 25 years of service. Does that mean that I am not drawing sufficient level of income, or my job profile is not good and my student's job profile is good? I think these are small critical issues. To say that a person living in rural area or doing farming is not doing a good job, or a cameraman in Times of India is not doing a good job and an anchor is doing a better job, I think these are wrong statements to make, which he has made while his presentation of what he has produced in the data. Certainly, there is rise in the level of unemployment that is visible from there, and various other data which are there. Given the fact that the IMF says, and it's reduced its growth projections, not only for India but for the world, by almost about 100 basis points to 150 basis points for the world, and for India itself from 7 to about 4.8%, clearly shows that there is a dip, and that's going to impact. But is it really impacting a large community? India lives in rural areas. India doesn't live in metro cities and in urban domains. So we need to consider the fact that these factors are there, and the CMIE data, which was released a couple of months back, also pointed out that there is a shift from the urban domains or to rural areas by a large number of people, and they found that there was employment there. So just to say, based on these numbers which have come forth, that there is an extreme danger or something is wrong or there is a huge amount of unemployment, I would not say is right. Secondly, if we also look at the data which we go back in the US, when there was a shift into a self-employment mode, when there was movement to create more MSMEs and create more self-employment, the entrepreneurship drive was there. Similar kind of data streams were visible even in the US and other parts of the world. So there is a shift, and that's where the government has also been, including Niti Aayog has been talking about, that the way we calibrate the data of employment needs to be looked upon. Someone who is selling vegetables or someone is selling tea at the tea corner doesn't mean that he is not doing a good job or he is not earning well. I think these are wrong parameters to evaluate the doing well or the satisfaction level of people. And I think that needs to be looked upon by CMIE and other economists as well.
Well, Professor Aman Agarwal, there are a lot of talking points that you've just given us, and I will come to it one at a time. But let me get in Anila Singh's opening remarks on this. Anila Singh, what do you have to say? What this study essentially tells us is that a fresh graduate, someone who enters the job market at this point in time, has very, very little chances of getting a job. 63% are unemployed.
Kavita, first of all, the data which has been projected by Mr. Vyas, I do not agree totally with it, because I find him to be a very prejudiced person, and we know that his mindset is tilted towards the Congress party. So definitely he is not going to be very kind in projecting the figures.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you here. Anila Singh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you here. Anila Singh, let's not make personal comments. Everybody on this panel is here for a reason. Everybody is an expert in their own space. So I would thank you to talk about the data and the study that has been put out, and reserve your comments on that. Let's not make personal comments. Please go ahead.
Kavita, you are absolutely right when you say that everybody on your panel is expert from one specific field, and I am a politician, and I am a Bharatiya Janata Party national spokesperson, and I am representing my party on your channel right now as a political figure only. So I am going to use that language because nobody can deny this fact that Mr. Vyas was in the team of Congress of making manifesto of 2019. But anyhow, let us talk about the unemployment. Definitely, unemployment is a serious problem in our country. We are not denying this fact, but at the same time, government has been trying to improve the figures, the statistics, or the numbers which are being projected by different survey reports. But you cannot say that government is not trying to lower down the figures. And if we compare, I mean, again, if I'm going to say something, you are going to say that since you are in the government, that is why you are saying. But this is the fact that if we compare the unemployment rate of consecutive 2 years, slightly, it has improved. But as we heard Mr. Aman Agarwal as well, there are the tools which had been used to project these figures. I mean, I think somehow they are not very correct, because there are several types of unemployment, whether we talk about seasonal, structural, cyclical, technological, frictional. There are so many types of unemployment. So he has to come forward and tell that he is talking about unemployment in which category, or he has done it in a very macro manner. So I am saying this thing that yes, unemployment is the problem. India is facing slowdown, and India in isolation is not facing slowdown. Whole of the world is facing economic slowdown. So we should appreciate the steps taken by the government. We should rather listen to a one person who is already biased.
Well, Anila Singh, I'll appreciate the fact that you accepted that there is a slowdown, and that you also accepted that there is in fact a problem as far as employment or jobs is concerned. But let me go back to Santosh Mehrotra. Now, Aman Agarwal raised some very, very interesting points. One of the things he's talked about was job satisfaction. Now, in this particular report where we are talking about this, Mahesh has made it very clear that he is talking about people who have not been able to get a job and who are settling for whatever they got. How do you, would you agree with that, or would you agree with the interpretation that Mahesh Vyas just gave, that Aman Agarwal just gave us?
Obviously, people have to settle after the age of 30 or so, after waiting for some time. If you're educated up to a level of graduate, that means you have the financial wherewithal, your family is well off enough to enable you to first study up to that level. And secondly, if you remain unemployed, you are in the age group of 24 to 29, and you remain unemployed for a while, you can live at home. However, after 30, parents also expect you to move on and get married and get yourself a job. So you get any job that is available, and one of the reasons why the unemployment rate has historically been higher in our country, the higher the level of education. This is the reason why it holds. This has historically been correct. But the point that I think is being made by the data, whether it is the government data which I was citing or the CMIE data, is that the unemployment rate for educated has risen sharply. So let me go back to the, the methodology of the CMI survey, which seemed to have been questioned by Professor Aman Agarwal. I want to tell him the National Sample Survey Organization of the Government of India carries out the PLFS on employment and unemployment, and similarly in earlier years it used to carry out the employment-unemployment round, and its sample size is actually somewhat smaller than that of the CMIE. The CMI sample size is statistically correct, just as the NSS sample size is statistically correct, point one. Point two, the CMI sample covers both the unorganized sector as well as the organized sector. It covers both the rural areas as well as the urban areas. So, you know, just because you don't like the data, regardless of the fact that the data is saying the same thing that the government's own data is saying, doesn't mean that you begin to trash the methodology if you don't know what the methodology is. And a final point about this matter that Professor Agarwal raised is that, oh, people are moving from urban areas to rural areas, and what is wrong with that? That is a fine development. Let me say the following two things. The meaning of development in any country has historically been that people move out of agriculture into industry, and they move out of from industry to services at an even higher level of development, which is the reason why in the rich countries the share of services is much higher. What we are being told is, oh, people going back from urban areas to rural areas and into agriculture is a good thing. Point one. Point two, that actually what is in fact happening, even in the last 6 years from 2012 to 18, is that millions of people are leaving agriculture, partly because agriculture is not generating the incomes that people would like to see, partly because the young are getting better and better educated and they want to look for urban jobs, for jobs in non-agriculture. And that is the meaning of development. It is not surprising. So, you know, let's just get a full understanding of what is going on before we make assertions.
Right. In fact, I have another point to raise with Aman Agarwal, but first let me bring in Aditya Narayan Mishra over here. Aditya Narayan Mishra, you are in the business of hiring people for large companies. Now, tell us this. The CMI data effectively shows that fresh graduates between 20 to 24 years of age are unable to find jobs. There is 64% of them are unemployed. It also shows that as they start aging, they are settling for whatever jobs they get. Is that the trend that you are also seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the number of people at the age of 20 to 24 who join the labor pool, there are not enough jobs. If you really look at the core sector of the economy, the engineering sector, manufacturing sector, in the last few quarters particularly, have been under pressure, and the number of jobs that are available for these people has sharply reduced. The only sector where possibly there is some hiring we see is the IT and services sector. So the opportunities itself are limited for those young people. That is number one. So what do? They keep searching for the jobs, and many of them go into a higher study, do an MBA or any postgraduate degree, because beyond a particular point of time, sitting at home and searching for jobs, it's not very socially very conducive thing for them to sit at home. So they go for higher studies. Many of them may not have the aspiration or the capability to make an impact of the post-graduation that they go for. So that's the second thing I would like to mention that we see. And the third thing is that as you continue on this journey, you become 26, 27, you take up a job which comes your way because you need to start earning. You cannot be dependent ever on your family to, and there is also social pressure that you start your family and so on and so forth. So after some point of time, you will see that people, someone who's educated as an engineer is doing possibly a customer service job, or somebody who studied computer science engineering is doing, for example, recruitment, for example, sales of FMCG products, or doing some retail sales and things like that. So there is a bit of an underemployment. One goes with certain kind of aspiration to an educational institute, but finally what one ends up is very different. Of course, some of them, due to their inherent talent over a period of time, ace that career and do well. However, at the age of 30 onwards,
Right.
they need to do something meaningful, even if their aspiration was something else.
Right.
Yeah.
And so essentially
That's what we
people end
see.
up, right, people end up settling for the job they get, and we'll also try and find out what that means. But also, Aman Agarwal, explain this. You told us how a lot of people are moving from the cities back to the villages. How do you explain the increase in demand for NREGS jobs?
You see, first, Tanvi, is what I have been pointing out, and you also asked Professor Malhotra, is about job satisfaction, which he did not touch upon or respond to. I very clearly and categorically mentioned a cameraman in Times of India, Mirror Now, is doing a job, and even Kavita is doing a job. Now, is her job better than his because her job gets more paid off? Maybe he's of the same level of education or not. That's a separate issue here. But is there a job less or more, which is something which Mahesh talked
But
about.
Professor Agarwal, the job that a cameraman does and the job that an anchor does, let me also tell you this, the job that an anchor does, the job that a camera person does are also two very different kind of jobs. The skill sets are completely different. If you have to compare, you should compare apples to apples.
I agree with you. But no. Again, I'm saying, as a professor, I said I'm getting what salary my student gets it at the starting. Does it mean that I'm doing a bad job? No. I think it is not a question of level of income, which Mahesh talked about only. Secondly, when it's a question of shift from urban to rural, it is not, the organic farming has been growing up. Internationally, the organic farming is earning more better revenue than the old traditional way of farming. There has been a shift because the construction industry has gone down. Large number of people used to come from rural India to urban India, partially spending their time in urban India, primarily working as construction wages, and others in the unorganized sector. And that has shifted back because they found that they were not able to get employed. Why was it happening? If we really saw the early 90s, when large number of foreign firms came into India, they started offering very good salaries, and there was a bubble which took place. People were getting employment, huge salaries were there, but then suddenly they found the revenue gains were not so they reduced the salaries. We saw similar kind of things because of the NPAs which got created post 2012 onwards, with the flush of funds going to companies where they were spurring those money to people to go about employing people. Now suddenly, because of NPAs, large amount of chunk of money has been squeezed off. Banks are still not giving money to even genuine companies which have not defaulted in the past. Now their liquidity has squeezed off, and as a result, we are seeing the job cuts taking place largely in almost all segments, and especially in the high-end segment where they are highly educated people. Now it is a system which is happening because of a certain way which economy is going through a reform, a correction, a problem which had been created. So it is not only a question. So naturally, people who may be very employed, I know of farmers, I have seen programs of those people who have actually moved to farming and improved farming so much, and increasing the productivity. Food processing, Government of India is giving large number of benefits for food processing units. A lot of educated people are going to rural India to set it up. So let us not
Aman
say
Agarwal, I
that,
agree with you.
just
I
people
agree
because
with you.
moving
There
from
is a
urban to rural
certain
is because of low income and high
segment of
income.
the population that has gone back to the villages. They are going into, they are venturing into organic farming and they are making a lot of money. I'm not talking about them. I'm asking you to explain to us why is it that the demand for jobs under the Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme has gone up. Now, people only ask for jobs under the Employment Guarantee Scheme, if I'm not mistaken. They only ask for those jobs if they do not have a job. That is only when they qualify to get those jobs. Why has that demand gone up?
No, you see, even in that, there has been lacunas in the past where we have found that people who are still working were actually taking those benefits from the government from time to time that they were showing. There have been large number of cases which have been found out to happen like that. So it is not only the fact that a person is unemployed and only then he is registering for that particular scheme. There are lots of other reasons where people end up registering for such schemes which are there, which are announced by government from time to time, which are populist measures. So let me come back. So what I am trying to make a point here is that these shifts do not talk about the fact we are still growing at 3.5%. We are still growing at 3%. Let us have some positive wave despite the fact that despite the corrections which have been taking, this kind of fall which we have seen in the industry, the worldwide which is happening today, like the IMF Geeta Gopinathan said 2 days, 3 days back, where she said India's fall is actually making various countries and the world economy go down. That means there is an extensive dependence of international community and the Indian community on the way India is growing. Certainly government needs to look at these figures. These are not small figures, but 7.5 figure of unemployment is not something, or even 9% as he said in the urban zone, is not something which is going to be completely dooming the country. We have seen figures of almost 12% in this country, which have been there in 15, 20 years back. In the US, I remember when I was there at the World Bank way back in 2001, the unemployment figures officially were announced at around 7.5 or 8%. However, the unofficial figures by various studies were over 18%. So let us not just get bogged down. The government needs to work on it, and I hope the budget comes out with propositions for it.
Aman Agarwal, you're a numbers man. You know numbers better than me. Let's also accept that this is 7.5% of a figure that is far, far more humongous than the 12% of the American population that you speak about. I can see that Professor Mehrotra wants to make a point over here. Professor Mehrotra?
I want to make 2 points. First of all, what we need to understand is that the CMI data on employment starts only in 2016, and the latest round has already been presented. However, the government's own NSS conducts large sample surveys, which I've spoken about, and the last one was done in 2012. Now, listen to what happened to youth unemployment, and I'm here defining youth as those between the ages of 15 and 29. Youth unemployment, if you were a graduate in the year 2012, was 19.2%. In 2018, if you were a graduate, your unemployment rate had gone up to 36%. That's a doubling. If you were a postgraduate, it went from 21 to 36%. If you were someone with technical degree, it went from 18.8 to 37%. If you were someone with vocational education, it went from 18.5 to 33%. In other words, this is consistent with not only with the CMIE, it's consistent with the fact that the open unemployment rate in the economy as a whole, if you look at the 15 to 60-year-olds who are regarded as those in the working age, having trebled from 2.2% to 6.1% between 2012 and 2018. 6.1% open unemployment in a country which has high levels of informality. 90% of our workforce is informal with very low quality work, is the highest. 6.1% is the highest in 45 years since data was collected. And we should remind ourselves that this problem is arising for two reasons. One, that the number of entrants into the labor force is increasing, as I think one of the panelists was rightly recognizing. This is a demographic phenomenon. Young people have gotten better educated, and having gotten better educated in the last 6 or 7 years, they are entering the labor force now and therefore looking for jobs. The other thing is, on the other side, is that the number of jobs that are being created in the non-agricultural sector has dramatically fallen. Dramatically fallen. The rate of growth has fallen in the economy, and the non-agri job growth has fallen. In fact, in manufacturing, job growth actually was negative between 2012 and 2018. These are the reasons why you are seeing the unemployment rates that the CMI is telling us, which is, again, I repeat, is consistent with the government's own data.
Right. And in fact, Anila Singh, like Professor Mehrotra has been pointing out, these are consistent with government data, these numbers. And the other thing, let me also point out, there have been instances lately of a large number of applicants and highly qualified applicants for a small number of posts in government jobs. This is, for instance, in 2019 of November, 20,000 candidates, all of whom had MTech degrees, most of whom applied to be watchmen and office assistants and drivers in Bihar. In Tamil Nadu's Coimbatore, again in 2019 of November, graduates which included MBAs and engineers applied for 549 posts of sweepers in the Coimbatore municipal body. Also, again in Tamil Nadu, we saw engineers and MBA graduates apply for 14 sweeper jobs. I can go on and on and on. There are many instances like this where highly qualified people are applying for the job of a sweeper, or they are applying for the job of a clerk in a government office. How can you explain? How do you explain that?
Kavita, you are absolutely correct. And whatever figures you have right now, whatever figures you have right now told us, they are also correct. And even I have seen that for one particular post in government, we get thousands of applications, that too from people who have done post-graduation, PhD. Many a times they have got engineering degree or the MBA degree, and still they want to apply for the post of a peon or any class 3 or class 4 level job. It is the truth. But we need to understand the reasons behind it. It is not Bharatiya Janata Party government which came into power in 2014 and again in 2019. The reason behind this, I mean, I can say one of the reasons which I personally, I mean, if I talk apolitically, I personally feel rather two reasons. Number one, that is like everybody knows this problem, that is the population. Our economy is very stressed because of the population problem in our country. And secondly, the quality of education in several or majority of the institutes which had been growing at the mushroom rate. I mean, after every 1 kilometer, we can find a college giving degrees of MBA, engineering, or BCA or MCA. So that is also one of the reasons. But at the same time, I mean, this is a problem, unemployment is a problem, and I expect that states also, because in India has a federal system, so states should also come in front, and it is a problem of our country, and let us not do politics on it. If there is a state not governed by Bharatiya Janata Party government, it doesn't mean that that government is not going to take positive steps in giving employment to the youth of that state. I think we all should come together. We know it very well that India is the 5th largest economy of the world, and we have major role. We have a major role in the world economy, and whatever we are going to do, it is going to affect not only today's generation but the future generation as well. So government definitely, I mean, like Make in India is one of the favorite projects of Prime Minister, but unfortunately we have seen that since Bharatiya Janata Party government has come into power in center, the opposition, they have created such atmosphere in our country that outside companies, they have started thinking twice that what type of atmosphere is there in India.
So, Anila
is
Singh,
it
you're
right
blaming,
to invest
let
in
me get this
India?
straight.
So many
Anila Singh,
communal
Anila
problems
Singh.
are going on India. So
Right, right.
opposition
Anila
is
Singh,
also...
Anila Singh, you're blaming the
Yes,
size of the
please.
population for the fact that that people are unemployed. You're blaming the fact that there are far too many institutions in the country for the fact that
I
people are
have
not getting
told...
jobs, and you're now blaming the opposition for the fact that investment is not coming in. Anila
Tell
Singh.
me one thing, Kavita, am I wrong? That our country has got huge population. Am I wrong when I say when we got independent at that time, India had 48, almost 48 or 49%
So,
of
Anila Singh, when you talk about the fact that we
role
have a
in the
huge
world
population,
economy?
Anila
In
Singh,
comparison of
when you talk about the
today's date,
fact that you
is
have a
it
huge
wrong that we have got
population,
mushroom growth of
no,
institutes
when you
which
talk about the
produce
fact that you
people
have a
with...
huge population, that
I mean,
that
tell me one thing,
institutions are
just for the
mushrooming,
sake of...
let me finish, that institutions are mushrooming, that there are a lot of
Kavita, if
people
I
entering
can.
the workforce and there aren't enough jobs, you are in effect confirming what we are saying. That there are far too many graduates out in the market who are looking
Kavita,
for
if I can.
jobs and who do not have jobs.
You
Let
didn't...
me bring in Aditya Narayan
You
Mishra.
did not allow me to complete...
Okay, make your point. Then I'll go to Aditya Narayan
Kavita,
Mishra.
no.
Make your
You
point.
have to allow me to complete my
Make your
point.
point. Anila Singh, make your
Yes,
point.
yes, please. I'm doing that. Allow me. So, like one more favorite project of Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji is Skill India, and we have a ministry also because Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji wanted skilled youth so that they can be employed in the industries of our country and they can do the job elsewhere also. So you cannot say that the Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji did not try to give a youth force to our country which is skilled, which can get jobs, who have got technical degrees, which can be practically utilized. So, I mean, steps have been taken by the government, but we cannot deny this fact that we have problems.
Anila Singh,
We
Anila
have
Singh,
problems, and
right.
we can
Anila
solve
Singh, have you made your point?
these problems together, state and center both.
Right. Anila Singh, you spoke about Skill
Yes,
India. Let me tell you, and this is, I'm quoting data from the Periodic Labour Force Survey. This is government data for 2017-18, which shows that only 1.8% of the population received formal vocational or technical training. 5.6% reported that they received informal vocational training. A total of 93% of the population received no training whatsoever, which means Skill India has not reached those people who needed it the most. Let me bring in Aditya Narayan Mishra. Aditya, you had a point to make.
We are trying to...
Yeah,
We
just
are
a couple
trying
of
to
points.
improve that, Kavita.
One is,
Aditya.
yeah, so the point about this, why so many people are applying for the government jobs, there are two reasons. One is that the government jobs are considered to be secure and there is a bit of a social factor around it. The second point is that the minimum wages are getting enhanced almost every quarter or every half a year. So the government jobs today are paying quite well compared to the underemployment that people are getting. What are the alternatives? That if somebody is a postgraduate or an engineer, he is not able to get an engineer's job. So he or she is getting a job which pays him maybe 10,000, 12,000 rupees a month. While a government job, even if it is sort of a peon job, the minimum wages are higher, and look at the retirement benefits and other things which are associated. So these are the two reasons why we see a lot of people are interested for the government job. And there is also a third factor, which is implied, that why people are going for it, because they are not getting jobs. So the unemployment issue is a very real issue. And then coming to the point of people moving from cities to the rural and vice versa, my observation is that today there is a lot of mobility between, towns and cities because of the way transportation, communication, and the facilities, all of that has developed. So
Right.
people are sort of moving for, there is a lot of flexible kind of jobs which are available. So people are moving from the villages to towns when they don't have jobs in the villages. Maybe the harvest period they go back, or there is a festivity they go back. They come and do a short-term job in the city for maybe 6 months. It could be a delivery boy job, it could be a driver's job in the Uber or Ola, or it could be a short-term contract job
Right, right.
as a
But
sales
also
executive
Aditya
or
Narayan Mishra,
maybe a maintenance
Aditya,
technician or
here,
whatever.
yeah, right.
So,
But also let me make it very,
yeah.
very clear here. The point of the discussion is very simple. We are talking about a very small section of society. We are talking about urban Indian graduates, people who live in cities. And the contention here
Yeah.
is that there aren't enough jobs
Yeah.
for graduates who live and who've been educated in the cities. In fact, we have a caller on the line who are called Venu, and he's calling in from Mumbai. Venu?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, please go
My,
ahead.
hello. My question is that this is a survey the person has told age group of 20 to 24, the unemployment is 63%. But let me tell you one thing, all the public sectors and the central government jobs, state government jobs, the limiting age is 26 to 28 years. So most of the graduates will try to get into a government job first. So they don't prefer to go for any job. Normally, they try for even the BA or a BSc graduates try to for IAS or maybe state PSC exam, maybe government job, and finally, if you don't get into any of the job, they try for government jobs. That is the first issue. So, saying that at the age of 20, I think normally many people
Right, right. Venu, your phone, there seems to be some problem with your phone line, but I get the gist of what you're trying to say. Venu here is trying to say that we are seeing a spike in unemployment between the ages of 20 to 26, because that is when people are applying for government jobs. They are giving various competitive exams. It's after they exhaust all those opportunities that they move to other jobs, to looking for other jobs. Professor Agarwal, I know you want to come in, but I want to ask Professor Mehrotra one question over here. Tell me,
I'll just
Professor
take
Mehrotra,
30 seconds.
when is it in
I'll
an
just take 30
economy
seconds.
that people start looking for job security? When is it that they start settling for a job where they know that the job will not go away, where they get a higher dearness allowance year after year?
Sorry, please explain yourself. I didn't quite understand your question. I think I missed a word or two.
Right. Professor Mehrotra, my question is very simple. When is it? In what economic cycle do people apply for jobs because the job is more secure, because they know there is a guaranteed dearness allowance at the end of it? In effect, when does the demand for a government job go up?
The demand for government jobs has always been there because of the security that comes with it. Please remember that government jobs actually account in our country for less than 5% of the total jobs available in the first place. This is not a good thing in the first place. I think the size of the government needs to grow. The government needs to create more jobs in health sector, because the health sector needs to expand, the government health sector needs to expand. In the education sector, we need more policemen, we need more judges. So the government jobs need to expand, and that's a problem. Now, but just to sort of try and attempt to answer your question, as far as the cycles are concerned, let's just see where we are in the cycle, or the business cycle, that is. Where we are in this business cycle is pretty much at the bottom, actually, because we've got structural problems, which I think I discussed rather briefly. And then, in addition, you've had the history of the NPAs, etc. So we are at the bottom of the business cycle. Now, clearly, young people who are getting better educated, they will wait for a while. And when not finding a job, they will take anything, for the reasons that I think other people have explained. I think there is an additional problem with Kavita which has not been brought up in this program, which needs to be understood. What has happened most recently after 2012 is that there has been a sharp decline in the labor force participation rate. What is the meaning of that? The number of the number of people in the working age is growing up, right? That's the dividend, that's so-called demographic dividend which we should be reaping. As the number of people in the working age is growing and the share of the working age population is growing, the number looking for work is falling. The labor force participation rate is falling. This means that these young people have gotten disheartened. They have become what are called discouraged workers. That is an even more serious problem. So in addition and on top of the open unemployment rate, in addition and on top of the problem of people looking for government jobs, in addition and top of the problem of severe informality with millions of people working as self-employed or own account, you have people who have become discouraged workers. So the potential unemployment rate is actually much higher than what the numbers are showing. This is very serious.
Right, that is very serious, but I think Professor Aman Agarwal has a contrarian view on that. Professor Agarwal?
I would not say a contrarian view, but there are 2 points. You know, you raised a very pertinent question as to why people who are so well educated are going for such low category jobs which are not befitting their educational qualifications. In addition to what Venu as well as what Mr. Aditya said, I like to point out there is a huge level of corruption money which comes in with government jobs. I was shocked to learn that a PN in one of the development authorities nearby actually earns 1.5 lakh rupees per month unofficially. You know, my salary is not that much, but he was earning 1.5 lakh rupees unofficially every month. And if there was a fall in that money, he used to be unsatisfied. Now, that is why people prefer doing PN's job with no responsibility and getting so much money than going for it. Secondly, large number of states in the country actually introduce huge benefit schemes under the social development framework for OBC, SC, ST categories. And there were a large number of scams determined by various states, which is Punjab, it happened in Haryana, it happened in Uttar Pradesh, where they found that there were fake enrollments. People were not even coming to educational institutions. Educational institutions were nexusing with the social development and welfare officers and actually taking and siphoning off this money of the state on the name of teaching these people, distributing certificates where these people are not even studying. And as soon as Aadhaar was introduced, it was found that in UP itself, the encashment from almost 2 lakh plus people who were seeking the scholarships had gone on to only 40,000 plus scholarships just with the Aadhaar enrollment factor only coming in. Now, this was another factor which actually created people having huge good degree certificates but no education at all. You know, and this is something which is critical in addition to what they said. Now, what Mr. Mehrotra said about demographic dividend is certainly fine and correct. There is no dispute about it. It's not a question about questioning 7.5 or questioning 9% or comparing data of government and non-government. The question is that we are supposed to look at why is unemployment happening and what can government do. You know, as a channel, as an expert, I think the government needs to be given opinions and positions as to what can be done instead of just debating on. Criticizing each other and finding faults with each other.
Yeah, sorry I'm interrupting you, but that's precisely the point that I now want to take to the panel. And I shall begin over here with Aditya Mishra. We are all in agreement that there is a problem. The quantum of it is what is under dispute. But there is a definite unemployment problem. What can the government do to address that issue? Well, Aditya Mishra, if you can hear me.
Yeah. So what the government can do, I think, naturally more jobs need to be created. And how do more jobs get created? I am not an economist, but what I have seen over decades of my experience in recruiting and staffing is when there is more investments coming in and when the companies are expanding, then more jobs get created. So in my view, what needs to happen is the core sector of the economy, the manufacturing, the infrastructure, all of this. And we have talked about the need for healthcare and quality education and all of this. If all of this happens, naturally that generates the service sector also getting geared up further.
Right.
So a lot more jobs would come in.
Right. So,
So
more
I think
investment, more
that's the
business
solution,
expansion,
and it's the hard way
boost
to
the
do
core
it.
sector. Right. And boost the core sector. Professor Aman Agarwal, 3 things that the government
Yeah,
can do in this budget.
possibly, yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, very quickly, very quickly.
just 15 seconds, one additional point is about, I think it's about the financial, there are certain structural issues in our economy where the businesses are not getting adequate access to the capital
Right.
for their expansion.
So
I
access
think
to capital as
that's
well.
another very important
I need to bring in the other panelists.
which
I'm running
will
out of
boost
time.
investments.
Professor Agarwal, 3 things that the government should do.
3 points, as you said. Yes, one is that we propose something called National Labour Exchange, which even Government of India Ministry of Labour is looking at, including about 5 other countries in the last 2 years. Second is the fact that the employment needs to be boosted, as Malhotra said, by the public sector, as this is a time which is creating problems world over. So worrying about fiscal spending will not work. They need to enhance their government spending, enhance the job allocations. There are a large number of positions which have not been filled in various universities, departments. The government is working at about 45% to about 55% in various departments across the country. They need to fill up those vacancies, and automatically they will see things will improve in this both in consumption figures as well as in the job markets. And thirdly, in my opinion, the government needs to bring in more confidence through the education system. Unfortunately, regulators like the AICTE have made it so commercial that they are looking at only buildings and structures. And as a result, people who are actually
I'm running completely out of time.
Santosh
Mehrotra,
but only selling businesses.
Right. Santosh Mehrotra, 3 points, very quickly, if you could tell us.
Yeah, I think the expectation that the budget will do something about jobs is perhaps asking the budget to do too much, particularly when the fiscal space that the government has is limited. So what is required are 3 types of structural reform. The first structural reform I've been making a case for at least 2 years is that the country needs an industrial policy. Manufacturing employment has been dropping. In the absence of a manufacturing policy, I don't think we are going to see a revival in manufacturing sector and therefore manufacturing jobs. Secondly, agriculture can create jobs, but within agriculture, we have to look at much more investment in poultry, in dairying, and more money for Manrega as an immediate consumption boost if we want to see investment rising. Because
I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I apologize. But I have to give. I have to.
One sentence.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Anila Singh, can we expect a booster this budget as far as jobs is concerned? Yes or no? I have very little time on the show.
Absolutely. But I have a simple request to make to the opposition that stop portraying negative image of our country outside. And if they'll stop, then definitely employment and economic growth will see a positive.
Fine. So that's where we are.
Graph.
Right. So that's where we are. We all agree that there is a serious problem as far as jobs are concerned. There is a pressing need to ensure that more and more jobs are generated because of the sheer number of youth that are there in this country. However, for that, the economy has to turn around, which means the government in this budget will be expected to deliver a big booster to the economy, which is why all eyes now on the budget a week from now. Time for a quick break on the show. We'll be back with more. Massive anti-CA protest in Chennai, and this has been going on for quite some time now. As you can see, this is on the lines of Shaheen Bagh. You can see there is a sit-in protest over there going on in Chennai. Ex-IAS officer Kannan Gopinathan was also present at the protest. I am joined by my colleague Pramod from the site of the protest. Pramod, what can you tell us about this protest? It seems like a huge number of people have come down, and this has been going on for quite some time.
Well, you can see right now even the police are asking us to leave because this protest was occurring over here for more than 4 hours, and Officer Dinakaran is asking us to leave from this part right now, and close to 2,000 women were standing at this spot, and right now we've been asked along with other protesters as well, because like we said, this is a very congested spot, and that's the reason finally the people at this spot requested the women to leave, and with that women have left. But even before that, just 5 minutes before that also, the women were demanding that the police here should provide them a better area to actually protest, and otherwise they will not leave. It did turn out to a very big issue, because all the women who were protesting over here, they were protesting against CAA, NRC and NPR, and said that this is a kind of protest which they actually got inspired from Shaheen Bagh, and they wanted for protest at least for 3 days. And finally, right now they've said that this protest will continue tomorrow once a different spot is got. And this way, as you could see, there is still huge commotion because police want them to leave, and finally they have left almost after the protest started around 4 p.m. and it had gone up to 9 p.m. and this is normally protests in Chennai will get over by 7 p.m. itself, but here the women were the women at this spot, they were very persistent, and because of them it almost went up to 9:30 p.m. and finally it has come to an end.
Right, Pramod, thank you for giving us that update. And Pramod over there reporting from Chennai, where from a 5-hour-long protest, in fact, women leading that protest as well, they have left the site after the police asked them to move, but they do intend to return back tomorrow and protest. Time for a quick break on the show. We'll be back with more. Well, breaking news coming on the show. Delhi Chief Electoral Officer has asked the Delhi police to file an FIR against BJP leader Kapil Mishra. Kapil Mishra had tweeted on the 8th of February there will be a contest between India and Pakistan on the streets of Delhi, an analogy that he drew for the Delhi elections. The FIR comes on the basis of this tweet that also sparked a huge amount of outrage. Well, that's all that we have for you on the Urban Debate. But don't go anywhere. Aarti Subramaniam joins us with the last word.